I'm Craig Kenneth, a relationship coach and a psychotherapist. Every relationship is different and every breakup is different. Work with me and you'll get professional help on your situation. And if you're in no contact, focused on personal growth, my workbook series, The Knowledge, will help you make changes like you've never made before. Available now at AskCraig.net. Hi there, I'm Coach Craig Kenneth.
I'm Coach Margaret.
And today we're going to be talking about an introduction to narcissism.
Yes.
And I know you're going to love it.
Well, I worked very hard on it. Harder than anyone else would.
Well, Margaret, it was my idea to cover narcissism, so... Margaret has done a lot of research on narcissism because there has a lot of information about it.
There's an enormous amount of information and a lot of controversy.
Yeah. So we have a bunch of videos coming up about narcissism, and so you have some understanding of what you're getting yourself into here if you decide to try and make a relationship work with a narcissist.
Right.
Which, we'll just say up front, would be very challenging.
Yes.
Right?
Right.
Okay. So what do you got here? What is an introduction to narcissism?
Well, I want to start, of course, with the Greek myth. You know I love those old Greeks.
You knew them?
Yeah, I knew them. I was back there with them. And one thing to remember is that the ancients did not have mirrors. Mirrors were a much later development. Mm-hmm. So if you were an ancient person, you didn't really know what you looked like unless you looked in a body of water.
Yeah.
Okay? So,
must have been really interesting.
Huh?
Must have been really interesting.
Yeah. So anyway, Narcissus was a beautiful Greek boy. Mm-hmm. And when he saw his reflection in a lake one day, he was so entranced with his beauty that he died sitting in the same spot. He couldn't stop looking at himself. Okay?
I thought there was something about drowning or something. No?
But he died finally just sitting in the same body of water so he could see himself. And in the meantime, his girlfriend, who was named Echo, was just brokenhearted because he didn't live long enough to be available to her. Okay, the metaphor is wonderful. Narcissists and avoidantly attached folks have an awful lot in common, and I think in many occasions they share both of those traits, the narcissism and the avoidance. So already we see an avoidant breaking a young girl's heart, okay, in the myth. In my experience, the topic of narcissistic personality disorder was rarely discussed. Remember, I've been at this a long time. Was rarely discussed at length in the literature. You didn't see articles on it. Nobody was talking about narcissistic folks as a diagnosis. You'd hear about the diagnosis occasionally when it was used to describe or diagnose abusive parents, like the DCF people or whatever the protective agencies are, would sometimes have consultants who would label abusive parents as so narcissistic themselves they couldn't respond to the child's needs. And that's really about the only context where you heard it.
Yep.
So there wasn't much said about it. I think partly the rise of narcissism and the interest we have in it now comes from the concept of codependence, which is a substance abuse diagnosis. I mean, everybody uses it now, but the substance abuse people figured that out in the first place. And as you think about codependence, usually one of the people in the relationship is controlling, and the other person just sort of gets absorbed into them. And so people began applying the term narcissism to the controlling person in a codependent relationship. Okay? Narcissism or narcissistic personality disorder was first recognized as a mental health diagnosis in 1980. Now, Freud and other writers had talked about narcissism, as a normal part of child development, but there wasn't any kind of a diagnosis until 1980. and it was first adopted in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders,
Yep.
which we call the DSM in the business. It first was in the DSM-3. We are now currently on the DSM-5, so it's now been around a while, okay? And fortunately, I was able to find a dissertation on the subject. I was saying last time it's great to find a dissertation because they did all the research, okay? So I read a dissertation by someone named Samantha Fields, and she concludes, after very complicated studies, in my research, I found empirical evidence of the link between narcissism and interpersonal violence. Okay, now that's really important. I also found that part of the reason narcissists engage in interpersonal violence is due to their tendencies to retaliate to ambiguous but potentially hostile interactions, their socially dominant attitudes, and in the case of interpersonal violence, prevalence of their hyper-competitiveness. Okay? So narcissists are willing to fight for what they want and very upset when they don't get it. All right? So you can see how the stronger person...
A few come to mind.
Pardon?
I said a few come to mind.
Yes.
They hate to lose.
Yeah, they hate to... Yeah, we know, we've heard that. So over the last 20 years, and even more specifically over the past 10 years, we have done a lot of work on the concept of interpersonal violence and narcissism. Now, early on, the mental health community always maintained that personality disorders could not be helped by therapy. And there were some real pioneers who have challenged that notion. One of the most notable ones being James Masterson, who treated narcissists almost exclusively. And the problem with the psychoanalytic people and the personality disorders is they said their symptoms were what they called egosyntonic.
Okay.
Meaning if I'm narcissistic or borderline, I like my symptoms, I don't see them as a problem, and you better not tell me to do something about them.
And how many times have we heard the avoidant say that?
Right.
I like the way that I am. I don't think it's a problem.
I'm not going to change. Yeah.
And if
you ask me to, I will break up with you tomorrow.
Yep.
All right? But we have found, partly because we now know much more about child development than we did, that many times people with personality disorders can be helped. It's a slightly different approach from kind of the worried neurotic who's healthier, but certainly these people can be helped.
Sure.
Okay? And I remember I was in graduate school in the early 80s, and people were still saying that you couldn't do anything with somebody who had a personality disorder. And before I went to school, I didn't know that and had done something with several of them. So,
now my concern is for many of the people watching is that, you know, if they hear us say that a narcissist can change and they can be helped, that many of the people that have been mistreated or abused are going to kind of hold on to that and tolerate being mistreated and abused.
And you can't do that. Because under no circumstances can you let anyone else abuse you.
Yeah.
And they have a great article in here about women who start to defend the guy and saying, well, you know, I know things will get better. It's just that he had a bad childhood and he's going to get over that. No, he's not, unless he acknowledges that it's a problem and the behavior left over for him is a problem and is willing to do something about it. And that's the trick. You can be helped, but you have to be willing to acknowledge the problem and be willing to accept help.
Yeah.
And I've had to remind many, many women, well, what is he doing now about getting help? Well, nothing. He doesn't think he needs it. Then, you know, it's not a good idea for you to hold out hope.
Yeah.
Okay? That he's going to come around. And when narcissists change, they do not change quickly. Okay? It can take literally years. I mean, once they start and get the idea and get into therapy, oftentimes it's better. But in many cases, it will take so long, you can't stay in a marriage while it gets done. Okay?
Yeah, and one of the things
too long.
I remember talking about over the years was clients that you had that had it. Even though they were able to improve in that area,
Absolutely.
it was kind of by looking at how other people treat each other and not truly internalizing it.
Right. And, if anybody has a brain, sometimes you can learn to do the kinds of things that don't come to you intuitively. Sometimes you can learn. And I've known narcissists several times myself, and I know one particular guy I admire for the work he's done. He has figured out what he needs to do to keep other people happy, but intuitively he had no sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's taken him a long time, and he's worked really hard.
Yeah.
Okay? But that's the trick. You have to want to.
So I think my kind of perspective is, if you are a narcissist and you feel like you truly are a narcissist, there is absolutely help out there
Absolutely.
for you, and you can absolutely change.
Yep.
For the people that are dating the narcissist and are desperately hoping that person is going to change, do not tolerate being abused.
Ever.
Do
Ever.
not tolerate being mistreated. And, I think a lot of people really struggle with that.
Yes,
and I
they
think
do.
many people that are dating a narcissist right now are probably wondering, how do I get him back?
Yep. How do I get them back? Yeah. And it's a struggle once they get into therapy, because depending on how much skill they find, like I say, it can literally take years, because inevitably they have a trauma history as well. Okay? And then you come to the theory around the avoidant. And I think many of the avoidant people we talk about are probably narcissistic as well. Not all, but many. And the difficulty is, yes, they don't see a need for them to change.
Yes.
Okay?
Absolutely.
And I'm gonna talk about that again in the next segment.
Okay. We have more videos coming up on narcissism.
And then we have a long story about how wonderful both of us are,
Oh,
because we thought we'd try being narcissists for a while.
can't wait to get to that. I hope I'm going first.
Of course, of course.
Hopefully you found this helpful. Like I said, we have more coming on narcissism. And of course, if you want to get our help personally, just go to my website, askcraig.net. Sign up for the coaching option that works best for you. I do email coaching and I do Skype. And Margaret is available for Skype coaching.
If you feel that I can be helpful, please sign up.
Just click on Margaret on the top of the website to do that. But that's it for this video. I'm Coach Craig Kenneth.
I'm Coach Margaret.
And we will talk with you soon. To get my help personally, go to askcraig.net and click on Schedule Coaching and choose the option that works best for you. I do email coaching or Skype. To schedule a coaching with Margaret, click on Margaret on the top of the page and order a Skype with her. For the Knowledge Creative Healing course, click on the link at the top of the page and click Get Started Now.